another episode of the House of Ways and Means. I'm Ways, this is Means, and we're going to be talking today about what?
Today, so I know a lot has been going on in the news by one of our favorite celebrities, Kanye West. So, I thought it would be interesting we have a professional here, a resident expert in mental health. I thought it would be valuable to just kind of talk a little bit about Kanye West. We hear a lot of terms from Kanye and just in the media in general these days about things like bipolar, paranoia, schizophrenia. So I think it's good for the listeners, viewers, and myself even as a lay psychologist to get just a little bit more insight into what these things are, what they mean for people who have these conditions and friends and family of people who have these conditions. So without further ado, I know you've seen some recent Kanye West material. He had an interview recently with David Letterman on Netflix. You should check that out. And he's always, he's never shy about being in front of a mic. His wife as well, also a celebrity. So, where should we start with this whole thing?
I guess the first thing to make a note of is that Kanye is open about the fact that he is diagnosed with a mental illness. Even on a Letterman show, he indicated that he was diagnosed at the age of 39. And he wants to be able to talk about mental health in the media so that people are more aware of it, and that people who are exposed to individuals who may be diagnosed with a mental health disorder, that people don't treat them differently, because of whatever their mental health symptoms are that they may be experiencing. So I think that's the first thing that's important to know. What are your thoughts on the way people view mental health and musicians or famous people like Kanye West and things like that? How does it affect you, if at all?
Well, here's the thing. If somebody like Kanye doesn't come out and say, well, this is something that I'm dealing with, I think people already have a thought, or there's some sort of belief that there's something different about most celebrities, be it and a lot of people just say, well, this person's crazy. Now, and we hear that amongst just people talking about just each other. But
right.
I think especially with, celebrities, we hear so much about, the crazy lives they live, the partying they do, perhaps some of the drug use or the alcohol abuse that they experience. Just the idea of living kind of like in a fishbowl where you have cameras around constantly. And it just seems like it's a lifestyle that lends itself to perhaps people just having issues that make them different from everybody else. Or there's also the thought that perhaps those differences that manifest themselves in people saying that, hey, they're crazy, is also what makes them geniuses to the point where they become celebrities. So, hearing firsthand where it's like, well, this is what I'm dealing with, I think it helps a little bit to give people kind of a sense that, well, that that maybe it's not just, well, it's not something that was done to them by the lifestyles they live, even though it could be, but these people are dealing with things that we don't understand, and that is leading them to do some of the things that we consider, well, why would they do this? Or some of the things that we say, well, Hollywood is a place you don't want to go. And when I say Hollywood, I mean like Hollywood, meaning show business or celebrity in general, music, athletes, even all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and to add to what you're saying, additional things that he said specifically about the mental illness, and something that you briefly touched on, is that he doesn't see his mental illness as a mental illness, just as its name. He considers it a superpower, right? And he says that having, a mental illness lends itself to his ability to produce work as a musician, to be, this artist. And so a lot of people would say that because of their mental illness that they're able to do various things, artistic things, they're talented, they can come out and, you know, perform a certain way. Some people may say that they take on a different personality, or become a different person because of their because of a mental illness, or because of a dissociative state and things like that, which is one of the things that he's spoken about. And I know when we first started talking about Kanye West and the media and things that he said in the news and things that people have said about him, I wonder, you know, how much him losing his mom affected, you know, the trajectory of his art and, you know, his mental illness. Did it exist prior to her death and it became amplified after she, you know, passed away? Like, you know, what kind of came first? And, you know, do we really know? Has he said anything about it? Because I don't recall seeing anything, you know, from what he stated about him having a mental illness prior to his mom's passing. And this was well before he was 39. I believe Kanye is now about 40 or so. And so, you know, outside of that, is there anything else that you've heard about him, his mental illness, or maybe even things that he specifically said?
Yeah, I mean, I know that you don't like to really talk about people's mental illness when you're talking about just things that people have said, because, you know, especially when you're a celebrity, there's all kind of gossip columns, there's TMZ, there's Media Takeout, like all these sites that are just giving all this unverified information. But one thing that I've heard him say in interviews, and in the interest of not making this too long, I think we'll split this up, and maybe next week we'll do another video and really trying to unpack bipolar, and also paranoia. But a couple of things I found interesting is that he's been off his meds.
Yes.
He's gone off his meds, and I think he feels like it makes him more open with his art. And then there's also the I think maybe it was his most recent album. He entitled it "I Hate Being Bipolar, It's Awesome," or at least that's what was written on the cover. And so I think that kind of speaks to the way he views, like, this dual view he has of his mental illness, which is that it's like a good thing, but then it's also a bad thing. And then, you know, just kind of the times we've seen him in the media when he's kind of really looked out of control almost. I mean, could you talk a little bit about someone with a mental illness, namely bipolar, being off their meds, how that perhaps that affects them, and then what leads to the states where he's kind of like seems so out of control and just wild? Like what insight do you have into those things?
Well, everyone, you know, responds to their chemical imbalance differently. So for people diagnosed with bipolar, and there's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, we're not sure which one he has, based on the symptoms that he's described thus far as him being in manic states and then falling into severe lows. He falls under bipolar 1. With that said, I'm going to move forward with it as such. People who experience bipolar 1, if treated with medications and if they find the appropriate cocktail, it can help them function, right, in life. They can go about their daily tasks and things like that. But what happens to the individual, for within themselves, they feel like they're being sedated, in a sense. So their creativity is being limited. And so you would find a lot of people who have bipolar or any mental illness, once they've gotten to a point where they've stabilized and they've reached that baseline, and we'll probably define that for you in a future video when we talk a little bit more about the diagnoses. But once they feel stabilized, or they feel like things are normal and they're no longer on that super high or that super low, that they don't need the medications anymore, and they want to be able to produce work or to be an artist in their most authentic self. And a lot of individuals feel, and even Kanye has expressed, that when he's in his when he's off his medications, he's able to pour more of himself into his work, and it's a truer representation of what he wants to put out. and it's his way of coping and healing and dealing with the mental health issues that he's dealing with. Again, this is different for everybody. People may not find peace in creating music or creating that type of art, but a lot of people come off of their medications because they really just want to be free. They want to be able to live their true self. They want to keep it 100, with themselves. And it's okay to a certain extent for them to want to feel that day and to feel that way. And I understand the desire to want to be able to give of yourself in whatever it is that you're passionate about, the way that you want to give, without feeling like you're being strained, your behavior is being strained, or judged by people in the media. But the reality is that the medications help to keep people stabilized. So, I'm not a huge proponent for medications. However, I do see the use of medications for certain illnesses and diagnoses, conditions. But it's different. And with Kanye West, I believe one of the things that I saw from a couple of the things that are out there from the social media and articles, videos and things like that he's done, that he is being treated, and it seems like he's probably being treated by someone who is holistic, as far as the way that they care for him. So holistic just meaning that they may not be implementing the medications, or they may just be monitoring him more closely for the symptoms that may indicate that his bipolar is becoming uncontrolled.
So what does that mean for like family and friends though? I mean, I guess it's almost like if someone has a mental illness and you're close with them, then it's almost like you have to be an expert on it as well. I mean, if someone who is like, hey, and this is not condition specific, really. I mean, I guess you'd have to know and really do the research. But if you're somebody who has a friend or a family member and they're constantly like, I'm off my meds, I mean, how should you react to that?
The only thing that you can really do is be supportive. I read something too where Kim said something about, she knows that he's off his medications and she doesn't necessarily recommend it, but she still supports him as a wife. And so as a friend, a family member, or anyone like that has a relationship with someone diagnosed with a mental illness, if you know your friend or this individual is coming off their meds or they're no longer on their medications, the most thing that you can do is be supportive of them. Look out for, the cues, the things that would lead to them de-escalating, or not de-escalating, escalating to maybe in this case a manic state. So I'm sure Kim has been exposed to this for some time because they've been married for some time. I'm sure she's experienced the very high highs, the very low lows, throughout their relationship, and they were friends for quite some time too. So I'm sure she's been exposed to this for quite some time, and it's nothing new to her. But again, support in whatever way that you can is the best way that you can help and provide for that individual.
All right, so I heard a couple of things about high highs and low lows. You mentioned manic and mania, so I guess we'll get further into that in future videos.
Yes.
So we're gonna wrap this one up though. We don't want to keep y'all too long, but we just want to always remind you, you can submit different topics you want us to talk about through our IG, or even down in the comments. Drop down, let us know what you thought about this video, and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we shall, we're gonna talk to them later?
Yes,
we're gonna close the channel today.
We'll talk to y'all at least for 2 more weeks, man.
All right, we'll see y'all.
Bye.